Good evening. Good evening. Happy New Year, if I haven't seen you yet this year. May 2025 offer you everything that you need and the best of what you want. And may we offer all of it for the benefit of everyone. So tonight, I'd like to start by doing a Shuso Installation Ceremony. Most of you know this, perhaps all of you know it. In a Zen sangha, a Shuso is a junior student who is ready because of their practice, because of their development, their personal development, to become a senior and to take on more responsibilities and various tasks. But I was thinking, as I was preparing for today, that it's actually not the best way to describe what a Shuso really is. Shuso means chief disciple. That's the Japanese term. So a Shuso is really a chief student, a learner par excellence. You know, a Shuso is a bodhisattva who's not afraid to say, I don't know. Who's not afraid to try and fail and try and fail and try again. Right? Because how else are they going to grow and become who they've always been? And so, you know, to think that becoming a Shuso is somehow a badge of honor would be looking at it in completely a backward way. It's not so much that it's an honor to become a Shuso. It really is an imperative. It's a responsibility. It's an acknowledgement of how challenging it is to travel this path alone and to then set forth the commitment to help others by traveling alongside them. So the question uppermost in a Shuso's mind should always be, how do I serve? How do I help? And then their commitment is to step forward and to do it. That's it. Everything else is kind of just static. Now, traditionally, this very short, it's a very brief installation ceremony happens at the end of Ango, right? An intensive training period in which, you know, really the entire sangha, of course, the Shuso included, but the entire sangha is faced with themselves, with their practice, with their aspiration to wake up and their wish to do that for their own sake and for the sake of everyone. And so what this requires is to be completely real. That's Ango training. To be completely real, completely uncontrived, as my friend Kim Allen calls her own sangha and her practice. And, you know, in many Zen monasteries, not all, but in many Zen monasteries, Angos usually last 3 months. Ours last a month each in the spring and the fall. And as some of you may recall, last year, we were still doing our winter Ango in January. So we started our first Ango, we did in January, and then we did in July. And then the second year that we continued this practice, I asked Ryu-san to become the Shuso. And so he was installed as a Shuso in January, which, because we then shifted the schedule because of COVID, because of weather that had been kind of brutal in the winter, and it would be difficult for all of us to travel to do sesshin, we decided to move that winter Ango to the spring, and then we moved the summer Ango to the fall. With the happy result that Ryu-san ended up being the Shuso for 10 months instead of 6, which gave me more of an opportunity to work with him, and it gave him more of an opportunity to continue to grow into the position with the sangha and to be serving in that way, right? Because we don't have that intensive, usually residential training. Right? When the Shuso is a monastic, they're in residence at the monastery or the temple where they live and serve. When they're a lay practitioner, they're there as much as they can, but then the training ends up being very intensive. They have a lot of contact with the teacher. Of course, they're right in the midst of sangha. And so, because our circumstance is different, I still wanted to give the Shuso enough time to bake, as my teacher used to say, to bake in the oven. And so I thought, as I was looking back at last year, and I was looking forward at the beginning of this year, I thought, actually, it would be really nice if the Shuso continued. And they started off the year, so that we're starting off the year really strongly together. That's why we started with Fusatsu. That's why we're doing Sesshin this weekend, so that even though we're not starting with a third Ango for various reasons, I still wanted, to start together and with a strong practice as we head into 2025. So I decided to do something rather unconventional, which was to separate the Shuso Installation Ceremony from the Ango opening ceremony. And just before we go into that, you may have done this already, but if you haven't, I would really encourage you to spend a little bit of time at the beginning of this year. We're still very much at the threshold, really reflecting on your vows or your vow, your primary vow, which I will call, for lack of a better term, your spiritual vow, to hold it, to regard it, and think, what do you want to focus on with respect to this vow for this year? Right? What is it that you really want to make real, to bring about in your life? And then keep looking for ways, keep being creative, and keep looking for ways to remind yourself of that vow and to keep it alive. Right? So the same thing doesn't happen that happens so often with New Year resolutions. Right? The first 2 weeks of January, everybody's going strong. Right here, the Beltway right in front of my place, it's packed with runners right now. It's like everybody is like ready. They're going. And then, you start to see as the weeks run on that, some people start to fade because it's hot, it's humid, it's festival season, it's summer here. It's a little bit strange. There's what would be winter in half of the planet. Here, although we're north of the equator, is actually considered summer because it's the dry season. And so it's hot and people go to the beach and there's a lot of festivals. And so, people stay up and there's, dancing, and carnival is a little bit after that in March. And so, it's like waking up early to run. It doesn't seem so compelling. And so the question becomes, how do we continue to find what we do compelling? How do we inspire ourselves? I often say this. How do we inspire ourselves and perhaps one another to stay on it for the long haul? Because the thing about practice is that it is exactly like our lives. It is our lives. And so it doesn't end just because we don't feel like doing it. So to keep finding ways to do what we've said we want to do, and to find ways to want to do what we've said. right? To have our choices match our enthusiasm. And to have our enthusiasm continue. That is really, I think, the crux of practice, of keeping a practice alive, to find and nurture our enthusiasm. So, this year, I've asked Komyo to be the Shuso for Ocean Mind Sangha. The name Komyo, as many of you may remember, means bright light. It's the light that shows things as they are. So it's not flashy, it's not dazzling, it's very simple, unadorned. And being light, I said in a previous talk, it's self-illuminating and it's other-illuminating, right? Like a candle. It reveals itself and it casts light on those around it until everything is illuminated. So that is Komyo's work. No pressure. To be who she is. To be fully who she is. And by doing that, to let everyone else, to inspire everyone else to be who they are. That is also part of what happens, in Jukai. You're not just taking a vow to live your life in a particular way, to live your life as a bodhisattva. You're also, in receiving your name, you're making a commitment to live out what that name suggests, what that name is pointing to. So, okay, would everyone please gasho? Let it be known that Alexandra Komyo Brown will lead the 2025 practice period.
I come here realizing...
Oh, hold on. You actually should be, you're sitting in your chair, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't clarify this. So is your zabuton behind you?
Yes.
Can you do that? Can you either stand or kneel on your zabuton, whatever feels like we would see you best? And you can rest for a second as she gets herself settled if you'd like, the rest of it. Okay. Now we're ready.
Okay. I come here realizing the question of life and death is a vital matter. I dedicate myself wholeheartedly, my practice this year, 2025, to the Ocean Mind Sangha. I understand my commitment to myself and to the Sangha and assume full responsibility of observing it. Please guide me in my practice.
All right. So Komyo will now do 3 full bows, essentially to the 3 treasures. If together we could bow to her on that 3rd bow, so return her bow. And if you could actually unmute and in your own words, very briefly, just say your congratulations to her on the 3rd bow. First bow, then congratulate. Now you can congratulate her.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Brava, Komyo. Way to go.
Congratulations, Komyo. This is wonderful.
No.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Komyo.
Thank
Okay, go ahead, Kumyu.
Okay. May my heart always be open and willing to receiving your teachings and wisdom. I still have much to learn in my aspiration to serve with sincerity and compassion.
And this time I just bowed to her. You go ahead, Kumyu. Do you remember what you say here?
No, I said my statement of humility.
Yes, you did. Now you say, may your days go well.
May your days go well.
Okay, now you can sit back. I have now figured out how to mark someone becoming Shuso in our sangha. So, we don't wear robes. The Shuso can't exchange their student's robe for the white lay robe that was said to be used by Vimalakirti, who was, according to the sutras, a lay practitioner as enlightened as the Buddha himself. We don't have robes, and so I had to come up with another way to mark a person's entry into Shuso training, and so I will do that. I will take care of that for you and for Ryu-san when I see you in person in the spring. And so for now, as I said to him, you'll carry your fledgling seniority as you would carry it anyway, lightly and without a trace. May you travel well. We've completed the Shuso Installation Ceremony. It feels good to be on this end of this. It feels good. I feel proud. I feel delighted. I was speaking to someone that I've known for some time who pops in to our gatherings now and then, and they were saying how, they were a little unsure about coming on Wednesday nights because before they could pop in and listen to a talk or, take part in a discussion. But now when they came in, sometimes they would find themselves in the midst of a sangha, a more, you could say, internal sangha discussion or a brainstorming session about changes we're thinking of implementing, ideas we want to enact. And, they weren't sure if they should be here, whether they fit. They felt maybe a little outside of this, what is an increasingly cohesive group. And, I understood what they were saying. And, I assured them that, of course, everyone is welcome at any time. But I did also acknowledge that we're in a very particular point in our development as a sangha, that we are indeed becoming more cohesive and confident, dare I say, of our particular expression of practice, and nicely growing into and within it. And so all of this creates a container that if you haven't been attending regularly, particularly on Wednesday evenings, which is when the majority of us can be here, then you might feel a little bit outside. And of course, that's not our intent. We want everyone who would like to join to be able to join. And we also need to move through this period, to really to clarify our structure and governance. We're making things a little bit, cleaner and tighter, more organized, so that our expression and practice of the Dharma is as strong and rooted as we can make it. So if you do pop in now and then, please bear with us as we do this. I promise that on the other side, there's nothing but good news. And I hope that you'll see that in the end, of course, it is all Dharma. All of it has at its core the purpose it's always had: our individual and collective liberation. And you've heard me say lately that the mind that makes spreadsheets is not the mind that realizes itself. And I'm trying to make a point when I say that, that there's a different kind of consciousness that is needed to do this work. But I've been spending quite a bit of time with spreadsheets lately. And I know that they're necessary, at least in part, for us to keep creating the conditions, the optimal conditions for practice, optimal conditions for this particular circumstance. So a sacred space still needs to be cleaned. The lights need to be paid for so that they can stay on. People who care for the place need to be kept fed, basically like cared for. And that's true of our virtual space as well, which is created by all of us and all the many resources that make it possible for us to come together every week, every day. And so we continue, right? We continue to refine the container that is the Ocean Mind Sangha, so that people can practice in the way they've always practiced, to wake up to who they are. Last week, I mentioned that I decided, after all, to begin the process of incorporating the Ocean Mind Sangha and turning it into a nonprofit organization. This will give us a number of benefits, and it will also provide a bit of a legal structure and stability that we haven't had until now. And I had thought about this in the past. Different people had asked me why I hadn't done it. And I had thought about it in the past. And every time it came up, I confess that I shut it down in my own mind, because I just kept thinking, it's going to be a lot of administrative work. It is. And I would have to do it all. I don't. But I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel ready for the meetings and the oversight and the reports, all the things that we would have to do to keep that wheel rolling. Because I did that, I was part of that. at the monastery. And so I know, I know the work that's involved, at least some of it. So I kept saying, no, 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 no. Let's just keep things simple. And then I gave a talk on how we forget that we are vast, that we are ocean, thinking instead that we're individual, separate waves. And at one point, I said something like, sometimes we choose to stay small because it's safer. And I heard the words come out of my mouth, and I thought, oh, And still, I pushed it down. That's too much work. Don't do it. You won't have time to write, And then I went to see my family, and I saw how swiftly time passes. We get older, and then it really does get harder to do things. And I thought, there's still time. I hope, I trust, and energy enough. So stop prevaricating. Since when have you not done something because it takes work? And I began, and I started to ask some of you to serve on a board, and some of you to serve on committees, on a committee or a couple of committees, up to you. And if I haven't asked you, it's because I haven't gotten to it yet, or because I'm unsure what kind of work you might want to do, or because you're just becoming a student and I'm giving you time to settle in. But if there is something that you would like to do that you feel, excited about, called to, please let me know. And, and I'm arranging the accounts so that they're clean and separate, from my own expenses, thinking about how to describe in writing what it is that we do. We specifically, right, this sangha in the way that we practice, which is a different, right? It's a new kind of training to some extent. A way that we've been creating, devising over time. And so there is a bit to do, and we will do it, little by little, with attention and with love. Not even because we must, but because we want to. Because we choose to fill our lives with that particular kind of joy. I got a text from the company that delivers my water, of all places. And it said, happiness isn't doing what you like. It's liking what you do. And I thought, yes, exactly. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing your ideas and seeing the things that the committees will come up with. I'm looking forward to being surprised, maybe even astonished by this year and everything we'll do in it. Now, there's nothing I like more than thinking I can only go so far, and then discovering I couldn't have been more wrong. And really, it is about joy. Or to a great extent, it is about joy. I was reading an essay the other day about joy, actually an essay that led me to another essay, that led me to another essay. And in one of them, the writer, Zadie Smith, had a very interesting argument. She was saying that joy has less to do with pleasure, or has less in it of pleasure and more of terror. Terror mixed with pain and with delight. Like the delight of looking at your own child, for example. And then that mixed with the possibility of losing that same child, which would undo you completely. And she said, that's joy. And it stopped me in my tracks. I really had to think about it. I really had to spend some time with it. It seems almost like a Zen koan. How can joy be made of the marriage between delight and terror? And not only that, that it's those intolerable aspects of life, all those small and large moments, things that we find unbearable, that make delight possible. Now, she's not saying, that sometimes what the pain that we go through that can be horrific, that in itself is joyful or delightful, but that it makes possible that joy and delight. And that is actually very much like the teachings. I mean, she was really saying that the intolerable includes that which makes life worthwhile. And then I thought, so maybe this kind of joy is a little bit like awe, which has that tinge of terror in it, of fear mixed with wonder. And also a kind of ignorance, right? That you become astonished, surprised by something you didn't see coming, or by something you thought you knew, but see on closer inspection, you don't really know it at all. Like the breath, like your mind, like this perfect, beautiful, strong, healthy body that has carried you so faithfully all throughout your life. Like this wild thing we call living. This thing that we don't really know very much at all, but are trying so hard to understand. And so I think joy does indeed have a lot to do with not knowing, has its share of not knowing, which of course feels like openness, like spaciousness. No, is not the not knowing of self-doubt. That's small, right? That's constricting. It's like being stuck in a windowless room. And ironically, when you really don't know, you can't doubt. Let me say that again. When you really don't know, you cannot doubt, because doubt, self-doubt, relies on knowledge, incomplete knowledge. Some part of you thinks you know what's going on and assumes you're not up to the task, whatever the task might be. Seeing a koan, taking the precepts, becoming Shuso, just getting through your day. But if you really don't know, then what is there to doubt? That's what I want, really, for all of us this year. That we be able to hold ourselves in that place of not knowing, very lovingly, very patiently, right? So that we're standing on the bank of the pond that is our mind, and that we be able to watch that water calmly, patiently. That we be able to trust that when the time is right, we will see what we will have to see. It will emerge, and we will recognize it. And we will therefore know how to act. Actually, maybe not even necessarily in that order. Maybe you will take a step, and then you'll begin to understand what it is that you're doing. So I think what I really want to say to you is just let yourself be surprised by the coming days. Be respectful of what you don't know, maybe even a little afraid, like someone facing a vast ocean. But don't let that fear stop you. On the contrary, let it surprise you into action, into movement, and then offer all the good and all the challenge of what you might find so that others can do the same thing you're doing. Which is what? Living. Nothing other than living. Hopefully, in our case, kindly and fiercely awake.